Hello there and welcome to the video. So in September I bought myself a birthday present. And I bought myself probably the most beautiful camera I own. The Ondu 6x12 Multiformat Pinhole camera. However, ever since I bought it, it's just been sitting on my shelf looking pretty. It is high time that I actually use that camera. So that is what we are going to do in this video. Go out and shoot with the camera, and I'll share some thoughts about the camera and the whole pinhole experience. Let's go out and photograph something. First image of the day. A nice little image, nothing award-winning, but quite nice nevertheless. We have these like rocks going out in the ocean. We have actually a stone's head in the background, if you remember that video. And we have some breakage in the cloud and some light over there, making for quite a nice background on this otherwise quite grey day. And I'm out with the pinhole camera, my first time ever shooting with the pinhole camera. And well, to expose properly for that, I took a metering using my mobile phone actually at 160s for ISO 400 as I'm shooting Kentmere 400 today. And then Ondu produces this quite nice plaque that comes with the camera. It's a guide for you. So at 1/6 of a second, that equals 1 second on this camera. And that is actually the equivalent of f160. Hope the image turned out. Let's try and find something more to shoot. I do have 5 more images to shoot, if I'm able to wind the camera, that is. So today I am trying to find like simple compositions. So this time around we just have this nice little tree here in the background, quite clean backdrop. Because this is fairly wide, it's 14mm on 6x12, so panoramic format. And I'm not used to that, so keeping those simple compositions, very clean composition, I think will be beneficial for this day. A fun camera to work with, it's tricky though, really tricky. And this time around I measured using my camera, my digital camera. And at the f22, 1 second this time around. Before we had 1/60th of a second. And if I have a look on this little plaque from Ondu, 1/60th of a second, that was 1 second. And 1 second, that equals 2 minutes on this camera. So we'll be standing here for quite a while. So let's go for that 2-minute exposure, shall we? Yeah, I kind of forgot about reciprocity failure there, even though I made a whole video about that. Anyhow, I checked and the Kentmere 400 for 2 minutes when you account for the reciprocity failure, about 8.5 minutes. Luckily I hadn't closed the shutter, so I just continue with the exposure for a couple of more minutes, or actually we have about 2 minutes left until it's done. And well, there's no wind today, so it might still actually work out this image. So I'm continuing with that minimalistic theme here. We have this very simple birch tree set against its somewhat dramatic clouds in the background. I think that could work quite nice actually. This time around I'm trying a vertical composition. That can be quite tricky with panoramic formats, at least for me. And I have a small little problem with that. You see, my normal photography tripod, on that I have a geared head. And that head can't be turned to a portrait orientation. So I had to use my video tripod to get the orientation. And that will be just fine, it will work just fine. However, it is a bit shorter than my normal tripod. So I had to sacrifice some height and couldn't get quite as high as I wanted. So I did compromise the composition slightly. And I also realized I made a mistake on the last scene we were at. You see, I did check that exposure with my digital camera. However, I have a variable ND on my digital camera when I'm filming myself. And I forgot to take into account for that. When measuring this scene, I got 1/15th of a second. When you check the little plaque from Ondu, that will equals 5 seconds. So I'm debating with myself if I should retake that image we were at before or if I should continue somewhere else. We'll see where I finish off the roll. It can't be more minimalistic than that. A straight shot over the ocean here with the pristine sand in the foreground there. Quite nice, super obvious, but I had to make that image. With that, it's time to head back towards the car, get home and develop the film and see if we've got any usable images. So yeah, I did pass this tree again when heading back towards the car, and I do have one frame left on that roll of film, so I'm retaking the image. Measured with my mobile phone this time around, 1/5 of a second, and according to the little plaque from Ondu, it actually don't have 1/5 of a second, but the 1/4 of a second is 20 seconds. And if I account for reciprocity failure, that's about 50 seconds. So we're doing that, crossing our fingers that the exposure will be, well, good enough this time around. Some mistakes were made. Most obvious that half frame at the end of the roll. And I do think this is me misloading the camera. You see, I loaded from left to right, which is kind of the normal way around, at least I think it is. However, this camera you're supposed to load from right to left. I didn't do this and I didn't read the manual, so I lost half a frame at the end, because I think the numbers on the backing paper misaligned with the little viewing window for when you're winding the camera. So it is my bad. Besides that little mishap with loading the camera, it is a beautiful camera and it worked really well. It is incredibly well made, out of wood obviously, and I have the walnut kind of dark wood, which I find really attractive. And there are a couple of, well, nice touches to it. First off, a couple of worries that I had before getting the camera. You see, the backside is held in place by magnets as well as the knobs. And I was worried that these might feel loose or come loose, but it does feel rock steady. If it will stand the test of time, I don't know yet. I have only had the camera for a few months, but I don't doubt it. Then we have the shutter, and I must admit I was a bit worried about that because it is just a little lever, but it worked surprisingly well. And there is a small little magnet to help keeping it closed, and also helps you when you're closing the shutter. It works really well, 1 second and slower, no issues at all. Faster shutter speeds than that, I didn't try that, but will you really shoot a pinhole camera at faster shutter speeds than 1 second? I doubt it. One thing I didn't like with the camera design is that it is shipped with a rubberized band that you are supposed to put over the camera to ensure that the backside is kept in place and to keep the shutter closed when you are carrying it in your bag. And I've already lost that band. I haven't had any issues with the unwanted exposure, so it works without it, but I'd much rather seen some form of locking mechanism built in the camera instead of this, well, after added rubberized band. Besides that, there isn't much more to tell about the camera. It is after all a simple pinhole camera. but it feels really high-end and it is handcrafted out of beautiful wood, and I do feel like it's worth its money of around 240 euros currently. Instead, let's talk about the actual pinhole photography part. One thing that is kind of tricky is that there isn't any viewfinder on this pinhole camera or most pinhole cameras, so you kind of have to visualize your framing without it. I kind of cheated and used my mobile phone to have a little preview window of what I'm shooting, and that worked quite okay actually. It wasn't 100% accurate, but it gave me an idea of the framing. And this camera is really wide angle. It is 40mm on 6x12 as I said out in the field. And that just happens to be the same focal length as, well, the horizontal view of my wide angle lens on my mobile phone, the Pixel 7a. So it is really wide. And that in itself is kind of tricky to frame if you're not used to it, and I certainly isn't. If we look at the images themselves, there's nothing award-winning, definitely nothing award-winning. But that vertical shot of the birch tree, I feel like this shows the potential of pinhole photography. This is interesting to me, it's dreamlike, and it is something else. And I really like it, and something I will want to explore more in the future. And I also feel like it's easy to say, well, pinhole photography, that's just a bit of fun, not for serious photography. But that's oversimplifying it. There's plenty of really good pinhole photographs made. One photographer that springs to mind is Marianne Engberg, a Danish photographer. She's done some incredible work with a pinhole camera, or multiple pinhole cameras actually. And that shows that there is a lot of potential and you can create really interesting work with pinhole cameras. And something I want to explore more in the future. So this camera will live in the bag alongside my normal photography kit, and I'll try and take more pinhole images in the future. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care and bye. When editing this video, I realized I forgot to mention two things about the camera that I didn't try out. First, it actually supports filters by a filter holder that is held in place with magnets, and it seems to work quite well actually. And secondly, it is a multi-format camera. It supports 6x12, 6x9 and 6x6. You can change the format simply by moving the gates before loading the film. And I think that covers it all. Once again, thank you so much for watching, see you next time, take care and bye.